out here giving us the old signals and stuff. See you later, Frank.
You may start at any time.
Okay. How about if you give me this? I like that.
1, 2, oh.
Frank, don't start quite yet because why am I having trouble with the last name?
It's hard. It's Martins.
Martines.
Like E. Like
okay.
imagine 2 E's instead of an I.
Because it just freaked me a little bit that I was going to goof it up. So I think that's what I had in my mind. But Shaun Martins, okay. Martins.
Now where do I look when I'm not looking at you?
Most of the time, you and I are looking at each other because we pretend there's no cameras or anything. You know,
okay.
Every once in a while, when we look out at the audience, you're going to want to probably look at that camera, and I'll look at that camera, that kind of a thing. Okay. All right. We're ready, Frank. Hi. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to Voices on the Wind. I'm Jonna Kuntz, and tonight I'm so excited about having a special guest with me tonight. Her name is Shaun Martins, and we're going to be talking about the Akashic Records. Now, many of us have probably heard that mentioned from time to time, but I don't know how many people are real familiar with the Akashic Records. And I know for one, I have a lot of questions that I'm going to be wanting to ask to learn more about them, Shaun. So I'm real excited about tonight. First, every time we do Voices on the Wind, we start with a little feng shui tip of the week. Because I own the Feng Shui Center downtown Missoula at 115 West Main. And we welcome people to come in and learn about feng shui, and there's many different things that go on at the Feng Shui Center, and I'll be telling you some more about that later. But tonight, the tip of the week, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cycles that we use in feng shui. We have a yearly cycle that it's called the annual number, and that one is kind of brought to my attention a lot this year because it's the number 8. And that has to do in feng shui with our limbs, our arms and our legs. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but many of my friends have injured their arms and their legs this year. And you know, the Chinese New Year starts right about February 5th, sometimes late January, sometimes January or February 15th, but right in there. And February 5th is kind of the cutoff for feng shui. But the year before we had the number 9, and that represents fire. And when you're dealing with fire, when we think about last year, what happened, okay? We even lost all the tourists and everything because of all the fires. So I knew right off the bat if we were going to have a fire year that there would probably be a lot of fires. And that was true. Well, this year I'm noticing how many injuries we've had with people with broken legs and broken arms. And it's just kind of reinforced again where feng shui fits into our lives and what we can learn from it. Another cycle that we use in feng shui is a 20-year construction cycle, it's called. And that's the one that I use often when I'm doing an advanced feng shui reading and I take the compass measurements on a home. We're dealing with a formula that includes the direction that the house is facing and the year that it was the year that it was built. And so that's called the construction cycle. And that is very meaningful and has a lot to do with what turns out in an advanced feng shui reading. Now, there are cycles, monthly cycles, and it gets down to daily cycles. But just as in astrology, like Western astrology, that would drive you crazy if you were trying to run your life according to a daily cycle, don't you think? So pretty much the annual cycle is one that is very meaningful. And like I said, this year it's the 8. We will be going into the construction cycle that now is a 7, will turn into an 8, the year 2004. And that will last for 20 years. So that'll go from year 2004 to the year 2023, right? And there are a lot of things that are supposed to happen within that period that I'm told. We might even talk about some of those things. Some of the Akashic records might have to do with what's coming up in the future. Because according to the Mayan calendar and different things like that, I've been told the year 2012 is very significant. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. But anyway, that's just a little tip of the week that that you can be aware, be maybe a little bit more careful out there with your limbs, your arms and your legs, so we won't have those accidents. Shaun, it's wonderful to have you here. I know you live down in the Bitterroot.
I do.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And where did you originate from? Where were you born and raised?
I grew up in Billings.
In Billings.
But I left after I graduated from high school, and I traveled around a lot. I lived about 8 different states around the country, and I traveled overseas for about 15 years.
Well, did your parents have a job that took them that many places?
No, I did that after I graduated from high school.
Oh, after you graduated from high school. And
put on a backpack and went around.
Wow, you're a very brave young lady and an explorer, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and then prior to living here, I was in Alaska for 6 years.
Alaska, that sounds like it'd be a pretty place to be.
It's beautiful.
And I've heard, I was just visiting with a lady from Alaska today that was, she was an astrologer, and she has been for over 30 years, but she said Alaska is one of the higher vibrations, she said, in the world.
Yeah, it's a pure, clean vibration. It's really intense, but I found it really comfortable. I love being there.
How do you think that fits with Montana? I mean, we have all the beautiful mountains and streams and everything here too. Is it similar at all in vibration when you think about that?
It's actually different, and some information came through in a recent Akashic record reading about Montana, that it's one of the places on Earth that is the energy here is very supportive. It's not intense like places like Alaska or Sedona or Boulder, Colorado. But it's very clean and very clear energetically. It hasn't been affected by a lot of earth changes or a lot of people or civilization.
That makes sense to me because, of course, people and all the people in some of the more populated areas are going to really affect the vibration for sure. And Montana is one of the last, they say, the last best places in the world to not be so crowded. I was curious, for the people out there that are watching tonight, I think we need to start with, what are the Akashic records?
That's a great question. The Akashic records, for every person, place, business, animal, country, the United States has records, all countries have records, there's a record. It's a record anytime any sort of creation comes out from source. From the moment it comes out to source until the moment it returns, there's a record of everything that happens. And that record is recorded beyond third dimension, so it's out of time-space. That's why you can look into the past and the future.
So from the very beginning, do you have some kind of a time period you can tell us about the beginning of how far the Akashic records go back? Or is there any information like that?
No, because it's not really in
chronological order? It's more in sequence of what occurred?
It's not in linear time, it's third dimensional. And so it's things that have come and gone and things that have yet to come. It's all recorded as already done. And so I can't say when it starts or when it ends because there essentially is no start or end because it's beyond time-space.
I see.
How's that for a paradoxical answer?
Yeah, it's hard to comprehend, but I know as we go along we're going to understand a little bit more. And
sometimes it's easier to think about individual, if you were to think about your Akashic records and kind of the sense that you have of your ideas of experience. But then I've had people ask in records, when was my first lifetime, and they don't give a time. They just give like a correlation to other lifetimes. But then they usually rebut that and say, but they didn't happen in order or something.
Well, and when you talk to energy workers and everything, they talk about everything's happening simultaneously in many different dimensions, and that is hard for us to comprehend. But I know that's going to get easier for all of us. I think we're going to experience more and more of what we're going to be talking about tonight, aren't we?
Yeah. And we're already practicing that with being able to be the cameras and the television or the telephone calls where you can see people. So you are 2 places at once, and you really aren't, but that's kind of getting our minds around being more than one place at once.
That I see what you're saying. I totally relate to that because just the concept of the web is something that none of us had that concept before. That the web would be out there and we would be able to travel like that. So it is, and physicists are coming up with figuring this all out too, and so that it will be all written out for us in language we can totally relate to. I know. We were talking a little bit earlier before we sat down here that you learned from a lady on how to access or can you explain to us a little bit about how you got your teachings and where that all came about, on how to access these Akashic records?
Yeah, I actually attended a woman named Linda Berger, came from Chicago, and she came to Wild Ground and offered a Wednesday night. It was kind of a question-answer session by donation, and everybody came, and she opened everyone's records and asked one question. And there were, I don't know, 45 people, 48 people there or something. And I remember one person even had that week just found the exact amount of money or within $5 of the amount of money for the workshop. And her question was, should I go to that workshop? And so all these people were interested, and then the workshop was offered that Saturday and Sunday of that weekend.
That's quite a group, too, that 48 people.
It is. Yeah, it's a high turnout. So when I came on Saturday, I was the only person there. No one else showed up for the workshop.
Oh,
and
amazing.
so
you had a one-on-one
I did,
workshop with
and
her.
it was supposed to be that way.
It's changed your life, apparently, it seems
yeah,
like it.
Yeah, as soon as I got into the records, there was some initial resistance, and then when I got in, I just cried for quite a while. It was very familiar to me. It was like being home. The records, and it came out that I had in the past been a keeper of the records.
I
and
bet.
it's just
because this is the way things work out. You know,
Yeah.
everything has divine order. Everything's meant to be what it is. Well, here's a question that I guess I have on my mind. People are probably wondering, can you access anyone's records at any time, or do you have to have some kind of a permission?
I absolutely have to have permission.
You do, and how do you gain permission?
I actually have a contract that I've written. Well, the records have directed me to write, just giving permission and the person taking responsibility. And even once someone gives me permission and I open their records, I don't immediately know everything about them. It's as if I go into a bank vault and there's all these drawers of information, and I have the key. Well, I'm given the key as the person asks questions. So I don't know everything about anyone, even when I'm in their records. I only know when they ask a question, I know the answer.
So you work with people when they're asking questions, but I suppose you can also get like a remote type viewing thing where you could get their permission without them being there. Could you ask questions about?
No, they don't have to physically be there, but they have to be engaged with me while I have their records open.
Oh, they do.
And the people, so I can do phone sessions, which I do, but I couldn't, people have asked me, they said, oh, you have my permission, go ahead and go into my records.
That's what I was wondering.
And no, it's not like that. It's a very conscious interaction between myself and the person who goes into the records. And the person that goes in with me feels, it's as if we are suspended into a different place during the reading. And it's very subtle, and we don't usually notice it until we come out of the records, and then we realize that something shifted while we were together. And so it would be, the reason that would be bad is if somebody gave me permission to go into their records, and then I chose to go into their records when they were, say, driving down a busy highway, part of their attention would be pulled away, and that wouldn't be. They need to be present with what they're doing, or they need to be in the records. Or know they're in the records, yeah.
Oh, I like that. Actually, I resonate with that. Well, I'm curious, is the Akashic Records located in a specific place? Can you describe to us at all?
It's not in the third dimension. My understanding of it is in it's a fifth dimensional concept. It's not. That would be the best answer. But it's not. Once you get into fifth dimension, you get out of time, space,
and out of body and
right.
things. So that makes
So if
sense.
you don't have time, space, there's no place. So it can't be in a place. So it's in fifth dimension. So it's more the conceptual idea of what the Akasha is exists. It's a fifth dimensional concept that we get to tap into from the third dimension.
Because I remember reading a book one time, and I can't quite remember that. It was a book on ascension, and they talked about the Hall of Records. Is that different? Is that associated with the Akashic Records too, the Hall of Records?
The Hall of Records, the Egyptian Hall of Records?
I think it was.
At one time, the Akashic Records were located in Egypt under the library in Alexandria at the time, and then they were moved up into the fifth dimension. Because at the time they were here, there was less distinction between dimensions, and so there were multidimensional things happening third dimensionally.
Okay.
And so,
boy, it's hard to imagine, but you know, if you can keep our minds open,
keep your
like
dimensions straight.
Yeah, keep our dimensions open, you know, or keep our minds open for those dimensions. I think. Well, you just made me think of something, because a friend who is in the audience tonight, and we are going to have some questions come from the audience. I should leave this question up to her, but I'm not going to. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. Because I want to ask, there's been some sort of mention that the Hall of Records under the Sphinx is supposed to open up or have more access to it, and that's supposed to be quite an event on Monday, this coming Monday.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and so that I was going to say will be something that'll probably be maybe when you go home tonight or something like that.
I'm going to go ask about that.
And you might ask about that, because she will probably be able to explain to us where she heard that maybe a little bit later.
I'd like to hear that.
She'll talk about that a little bit.
I'm not sure the sense that I'm getting of that is a different, what's recorded there is different than the Akashic Records, what's
Okay.
there now physically. Although keep in mind that many of the places in Egypt are interdimensional portals. So
there's different different records and different.
but it's not as if they could go into the Hall of Records.
Okay.
It's not someplace that some construction man is going to accidentally wander into. You can't accidentally get there.
Can you? I'm real curious to see if you can kind of walk us through, or show us, maybe tell us how you access the Akashic Records, and can anyone access them? Or do you really need to learn the specific route and the specific way?
Anyone can access them, and people do all the time. Anytime you have a sense of foreboding or some sort of intuition or an idea occurs to you, all that's the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records are just a blueprint of all of our possibilities, and the possibility that we kind of set out this is how we'd like things to go, and then we kind of take different paths within certain parameters that we've already set up for ourselves. And so anyone can get into the Akashic Records. It's not something that you need to learn. The reason people have trouble accessing them is because the information comes through pure and clean. Anytime anyone prays or asks a question, they immediately get an answer. Always. There's never a time that somebody doesn't get the information immediately.
So they just have to trust that what they're hearing, their intuition is right on.
Well, what usually happens if they don't hear it is that it comes up against one of their belief systems or one of their fears or something, and so they just don't even recognize it as information coming in. It just kind of falls away.
So it's kind of like anything else. If you're an open channel and you trust in, Creator, Spirit, whatever name you put to that,
Exactly.
then you are going to have more easier access, easier time understanding.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
so
and that
exciting.
being said, of course, I have my own biases and my own blocks. So, and there's many ways to get into the records. And the way I learned was with a prayer that I believe is I think it has a Mayan. I forget exactly where it came from. I know it was translated from Spanish. So I don't know if that would be where that would be.
Can you do that with us?
Do the prayer. I can't say the prayer because it would open the records.
It would open it.
And the way it works, I say part of it out loud when I do open someone's records, and then I say part of it to myself, and then the records are open. And the prayer is something that is what is taught because things happen when you open the records. Not that it's a big secret or anything, but you just don't want to.
Emotions and everything's let go. Well, do you think, I'm a pretty open channel, I was going to say, would we be able to demonstrate something later on for the audience by opening the records or not?
By opening your records?
Like if I asked a question or something?
We could go in just briefly. The thing is that you don't know what's going to come up with the record, so I don't know how. But we could ask a couple questions. Open your records and
Maybe
ask
just
a couple
towards the
questions.
end or something, in case I got real emotional or something. Frank can cut out. Frank, I
Edit
can
you
say
out.
cut. Yeah.
And it's not the people just love being in the records. It's a wonderful feeling. I wish I could be there all the time.
Well, I know, I'm excited. I would love to do that with you. If we do get a chance, I think that would be something that I'd love to do.
Except I don't have my prayer, but I can run out and get my prayer.
Okay, yeah, we can take a little break, to do that later. So you kind of have your own method. So I guess I was.
So anyone could learn the prayer.
Anyone
and
can
learn
learn
how to
the
get in.
prayer, and it sounds like a wonderful way to have, to do it. You were saying sometimes your intuition just kicks in, and that's part of the Akashic Records too. So if people when they feel like they've had a past life in such and such, like let's say Glastonbury the word Glastonbury comes up, and immediately you're hit that yes, I've been there. I know that place. That's part of the whole.
You didn't have any sort of mental block, so you just immediately go to the memories that you have of Glastonbury, and so you just the records are always there. They're always accessible, and we just mentally don't think we have that memory, so we just get in our own way. But people are in and out of them all the time.
But to have that kind of direct tool like that you've learned to get there quickly and and to stay focused and everything. That makes sense to me.
And that's what you learn in the class, is how, what she did was she just took me in and out of the records throughout the day. So I felt what it was like to get in the records, and then the difference of going out and information. And it's so subtle. When I first learned to do the records, I opened them all the time. I was so excited. I couldn't hardly stand it. And so I was driving once to Billings, and so I had 6 hours on the road, and I thought, I'm just going to open my records and just have this conversation, because, you know, nothing really happens. You just have this access. And I had to close the records immediately, because the sense of trying to drive and do the records, it was impossible.
I bet, because you would be emotionally involved with your own records anyway.
Well, it wasn't emotions. It was just the energy is so high that it seems like I'm functioning normally when I'm in the records, but I didn't realize until that experience how
that driving is another thing.
And just anything. And I tried opening them at a restaurant once. I went to have sushi with my friend, and I was just going to read her records while we were waiting for the miso. And it was just, energetically, everything just shifted. And I couldn't, I was distracted by everything. Everything is interesting when I'm in the records, and there was too much around.
I bet. So for those of you at home, don't try this while you're driving.
Don't try this while you're driving.
Or waiting for your miso. I like that.
Or at a restaurant.
I like that. What happens once the records are open? Like, okay, another question that I had for you was, a lot of times, you know, we're emotionally attached to things. Like sometimes people don't like to do their own tarot readings and things like that, because you are so attached that you can.
Your biases interfere.
Your biases can throw things maybe a little bit. You might not see things the way they really are. Do you find that when you try to?
That actually, I actually have read tarot cards and runes, and just done all kinds of different channeling. I've been channeling for a long time, but I wasn't really willing to channel for anyone else for that very reason. So when somebody wanted a tarot card reading, I just bring them over and give them my tarot deck and show them how to do it, because I knew that my bias would get in the way, and so. It's really interesting to me that I'm willing to do the records, because, and the reason is there's some built-in gatekeeping mechanisms in the records. The first is that the person, if you've had any other sort of channeling sessions, ordinarily the person channeling just starts giving you information. And you can ask questions, but the person doing the channeling primarily instigates what you talk about, because that's what your guides are trying to tell you, and so that's how that works. The records require that the person getting the reading actually ask the questions. And so and it's not set up so if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the answers, because it's just a conversation with yourself. So you'd never set yourself up to.
Like you said earlier, you'll get the answers to whatever questions you have.
Right, right. And a lot of people, once people set an appointment, I say keep a notebook and paper by, because questions start coming. And people come with lists of questions, and then often they get in the session and actually ask different questions.
So is it unlike channeling that there's not going to be a lot of information that comes to you that's not in the form of a question?
Right, it's all in form of questions.
Okay.
And you can, if you ask a general question, they'll answer the question generally, the records, and then they'll say something like, they'll point you in a direction to go, or they'll say, this is a general answer, stick with this, there's more there. But it needs, and the reason, my understanding of the reason the questions is important is because you have access to all the information at all the time as it is, you need to bring it through your mind. So you need to get it in a certain form to comprehend it and to be able to work with it. But that being said, what people ask and what they can comprehend during a reading is phenomenal. And once they come out of the records, they realize the level that they were asking questions on, and it's a wonderful process. But that's how it keeps the bias out, because I don't have to. A question is asked and the answer just comes. And the answer comes to me in the form of a visual of some sort. I see an image, and usually I know instantly what that image is supposed to mean. Usually they show me images that represent something that I'm familiar with. And so, but sometimes I see something that makes no sense to me. And so I just tell the person, this is what I'm seeing, and they always know, oh yeah, that's this, and they explain it to me.
That makes sense. Because like I'm familiar with, we have a gal at the Feng Shui Center who does crystal ball readings, and a lot of times things come through for her that way.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't figure out at all for the life of her what, this would mean, like maybe some fish or something, but to the person it would mean something.
Right.
So that does really make sense to me.
Yeah, it's a nice gatekeeping method.
This is so exciting, at the Feng Shui Center, and I'm sure many other places around town, well, I don't know about many other places around Missoula, but have you taught classes? 'Cause I'd love to have you come and teach a class in this if
I
you would
haven't-
be willing to.
I haven't taught classes actually, and I'm not really interested in teaching them. I know Linda's interested in teaching more. A friend of hers, Lillian Flowers, lives here in town.
Oh.
And so I know she wanted to come back and teach more classes, and I actually have a lot of people interested in it. So I'm sure that's something that would be able to come together
We might
easily.
be able to get that going
Yeah.
because we're always wanting to learn new things and share new things with people. So that would be something really fun.
And it's a great time for people to get into their records.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of what might be some of the questions, like now that you've gotten more experienced of getting in and out of the Akashic Records, and you had fun, doing it and practicing and everything, what are some of the questions somebody might ask to give us some ideas?
Oh, goodness. Let's see.
Can you remember some of the first
Well,
ones
the
you
biggest
asked?
question is, what's my life purpose?
That's a big one. People spend their
How
whole
can
life
I-
trying to find out
Yes.
that. Yeah.
But it's time for people, the thing about the records too is, where it's different from other channeling, is they don't say your purpose is to go out and spread peace, or your purpose is to carry love. They say, you go here and you do this and you do it this way. They give homework, they give very specific steps. It's very specific. And so they will say what your purpose is, and if the person doesn't ask, the next question should always be, okay, how can I start doing that today?
How do I go about doing
Yeah, this is not something that happens in the future. It's time for people. And that's the other thing, is that by the time someone actually comes to a reading and actually gets into the records, they're at a level where they're really ready to get to the core of their issues. Because a lot of us, even in metaphysical circles, we know kind of what we're supposed to do, and what we're still kind of dancing around it. And when you come into the records, you're ready to get to the core of it and be prepared for a shift. Nothing is ever the same after someone does an Akashic record reading. Their whole world changes every time.
I can imagine. And again, it's just the order, that's meant to be, the time that's meant to be.
Yep. That's when I was asking the records before I came to do this. I just had my records open, and I said, what do I need to know about this session? And they said, just speak from your heart, and those who are supposed to hear it will hear it. Which is so simple, and I mean, it's not.
That sounds like something I try to do, here.
Yeah.
It's, I guess, one thing I found out is for people, I don't know, to just, like you said, come from your heart. When you come from your heart, you can't go wrong. It seems like, and your integrity is there, and and everything fits in well. There's been a lot of events that have happened this week. Terrible, tragic events, and I know sometimes the show won't be airing this Sunday. It might be airing maybe a week from this Sunday, but this is the week that the Twin Towers, the World Trade Centers, were hit, and I was wanting to ask you. This is probably something that is going to be too emotional for you to.
I actually don't have any emotions about this. I'm really excited about this.
So this would be something that I could ask you a few questions about it. What does this all mean? Have you accessed the Akashic records about this?
I actually opened the records on Tuesday afternoon when this was happening. And another thing about the records is I don't remember. Once I do a reading, when I come out, I don't remember all the information. And I didn't record or write this one down. A friend of mine wanted me to open the records, so she asked the questions. So I just remember bits and pieces. The primary thing I remember the record saying is that it's time for the United States to tell the truth. And they talked about the United States as what the United States is meant to be, and what the United States has come to be and come to represent. And what it is represented as, and what people are perceiving it as, is not really what it is. There's a lot of discrepancy. The analogy they used, which I thought was really interesting, is they took the idea of cutting and pasting a document, say on the computer in Microsoft Word, where there's the original idea of what the United States is supposed to be, and then each person and groups of people have taken it and cut it and pasted it into another document and changed it and made it a whole different thing, based on the original document but different. And it's time for that to merge. And they compared it to Atlantis and the Gaia, the Earth herself, moving into fifth dimension, and we're moving into what I'm finding in a lot of people's readings is they're drawing everything to them that is theirs and bringing that into balance. And the United States is doing that as well. And so what's being called to our attention is that we are not doing that. We are not who we think we are as a country, and other people are calling that to our attention and to the world's attention.
You know, that hits me when, as you talked, so it's like to find that oneness, which like as energy workers and healers and things, it seems like a big thing is to actually find that true oneness of where we all belong together.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in order a little bit about what you're saying, that, you know, this is hard to talk about, I know, because we're still like, I think I got sick, I got a cold because of it, because I'm not ever sick, you know, knock on wood. But when I saw that immediate destruction and all those souls that were killed, you know, and instantly, I cried. Many people cried.
Just to talk about that, what the record said, my friend asked, did those people volunteer to go? And of course they did, and they showed me in the records when she asked, those people served a really high purpose. They got to bring something really important to the attention of the world. They're fine. They're gone. They're up there. They showed me kind of, I mean, they showed me having a party, and it wasn't a celebration, but it was this, the things that happened on Tuesday have changed the world forever. And the people who died were part of that.
It's a very significant message.
Yeah, and they're fine, and it's everything here has changed. But they knew they were going to do that, and they did it.
But we need to each search individually and then try to find as a whole, as a nation, what it all really means.
Mm-hmm.
Not just what, you know, like what our president might say it means to the country.
Exactly.
We need to individually discover for ourselves what it means, and then try to get that as a collective.
Mm-hmm.
So that
and
is
if you
going
think
to be
about,
work for
if
us.
we think about the country as a lot of those of us who have been dealing with our personal issues, we realize that we create our own reality in life.
Mm-hmm.
The United States, what has happened to the United States could not happen to the United States unless there was a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, a lot of the common belief is we have been attacked, we are victims. What did we do? We're just, you know, the nicest people on the planet.
Right. There's
Maybe
always
we
two
need to look at
sides-
that a little bit.
Two sides to every story. It's never simple.
Yeah.
But that is, it's definitely a message in a very big way that what you said seems to really hit.
And everything has changed. And the other thing to keep in mind too is you mentioned the year 2012 about the Mayan calendar, and that's something that comes up a lot in the records.
Yes, can we
And,
talk about that?
We're anticipating the entire everything being different by 2012. So things have to happen in a big way, and things have to change. This is one of those changes.
Quickly, too.
Yeah.
We don't
Mhm.
have a lot of time.
Yeah.
We have
So something had to get our attention, and so this is very useful in that sense. And it's exciting in the sense that, okay, things are off to a big start. Let's make those changes, and this is the beginning.
You remind me of, we had a lecture today. We always have a free lecture on Thursdays at noon at the Feng Shui Center. I'd love it if you could come do one of those
I would
for
like
us.
to.
That would be fun. But one of the gals in the audience today pointed out, and I've got to try to remember how this came about. And she said, oh gosh, if I could think we were talking about the Y2K and how that fit in, and how we actually, as a collective energy, you know, that people made that so it didn't happen. Now, according to the Akashic records, can we do that? Can we change our fate?
Oh, absolutely. And you can change the past. Not only can you change the future, but when you make a change and set something in action, it changes the past. And I like to think about, there's a couple movies that kind of play with this idea to help us get used to it. One of them is, let's see if I can remember the name of it, with Dennis Quaid, where he is in the 50s as the father, and then his son is in the same house 20 years later or something. Do you know the name of that movie?
I don't know if I've seen that.
And as he does things in the present, it changes things in the past. And
Wow.
so, you know, people disappear. Something happened and his mother didn't exist anymore. And that's the kind of thing that happens when we take an action. It changes our whole past, so we don't remember that the past has been changed. But it's as powerful as changing the future. So we can change things at any time.
Wow. So that makes every one of us, again, even more responsible for our deeds and what we do. So this is a really big message. on
And
how-
responsible, we can think about it in responsibility as this heavy thing on our shoulders. That we
Yeah,
can
it's
think
not a
about
very
it.
good word, is it?
Nothing's irreparable. Nothing is final. Anything that so we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. We don't
Uh-huh.
have to have any recrimination against ourselves. Anything that's done can be undone, and we can change everything in a moment's notice.
So if we make a wrong decision, not to be so hard on ourselves and just, well, I like that too. It's like, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. I like that
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
Okay. Hey, audience. You're going to make me start coughing a minute with my cold. This is really fun to have you here and ask these questions. I was going to say, in fact, there's a question here that we have. If someone doesn't ask the right questions, does that mean that they won't get the information that they're looking for? Do you have to have a specific way you ask the questions?
No, and some people have the hardest time getting to questions, and you'd think asking a question is a simple idea, but when you're trying to get your mind around something, people will talk for, 2 minutes, and there will be no question. And the records will always say, is there a question? And then the person is stumped and they start talking again. And the records just help you get to the question. They help you ask questions.
So spit it out.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just spit it out.
And they point you directions to go. So it's not about asking the right questions. It's just about the process of thinking in terms of questions and answers.
I can see why people, step around what they really want to ask, because those answers sometimes scare them.
Yeah. If you ask the question, you're going to get the answer, and you know that in the records. But they always get to the question. No one ever comes out of the records incomplete. Sessions usually go from an hour to an hour and a half, and I don't keep time, and I don't end the session. It just comes to a natural ending. And people in the beginning, they're all worried because they have so many questions, and they think, how am I going to get these answered in an hour? And every time, they're done. They get everything they wanted to know.
So we just need to let go of that fear, because fear always gets in the way anyway. It doesn't do any good.
Or just be afraid of it anyway. It's still not going to happen.
Right, and just do it. It sounds right. Is this? Are people afraid to open up to you? Sometimes because they're afraid then you'll know more about who they are than they want.
If they do, they don't express it to me. That's probably a concern. But by the time they call me, they've already decided that if that's going to happen, it's worth the risk.
And they trust you. Just like we all kind of connect with different, massage therapists, Reiki masters. We all connect with different people. So the people that are ready.
I think
to
maybe
come
their
to you.
desire to have the information supersedes their fear that they might be exposed. But as I said before, I don't know anything other than it's in the records, and I forget. I can usually remember for 5 or 10 minutes after the session, and then as time goes, I completely forget. If somebody asks me something specific about their reading, a couple weeks later I can remember that specific thing, but it's all gone. It's just not there because it doesn't stay in my mind. My mind would get really full. That's a lot of information.
Yeah. When I sit here and I look at you, and you're pretty young, and
people are often surprised by that.
Yeah. Did your travels around the world kind of set you up for this a little bit, do you think? I mean, have you always been interested in spirituality and energy work and things like that? It's always been
my
a part of
parents
you?
were always interested in it, and it's something I've been exposed to since I was young.
See, that's so different from me, because I actually kind of slid into the spiritual work and the energy work through feng shui, and it just totally started opening up these doors for me. Whereas, of course, I was always interested in astrology and dabbing at different things here and there. I was a little different than it seemed like, the rest of the kids in the family. But so you were kind of brought up that way, and you traveled.
Just encouraged to explore things. And I've been looking for the Akashic Records always. That was always a term that was really interesting to me.
Really? So
and
you've heard of this a long time ago.
Yeah, but I couldn't ever get information on it. It comes up a lot in the writing. And the Akashic Records have been around in all recorded history. They're the Book of Life in the Bible. They're in all. The Akashic Records are talked about in all ancient languages and all ancient writings. They've been referred to for always. The only thing I could find. Excuse me.
I was just going to say, is the oldest language the Sanskrit language, and they were probably in that language too.
They were in that language, and they were before that too. They were obviously before language. That's just they've been around since creation began. So they're mentioned all the time, but they're not really talked about other than what they are. But how to get into them and what happens is not really talked about. The closest I could find was Edgar Cayce's writings, and he was a trance channel, and so I wasn't real interested in that because I wasn't willing to.
Can you tell us
be
what
a trance
that is?
Channel. Oh yeah, a trance channel is where, when I channel the Akashic Records, it's just like this. It's a conversation like this. In a trance channel, people don't remember what happens. A lot of times they close their eyes. They're not there.
Oh.
during the channeling. Information comes through them. Somebody else comes into them, and that's where the information comes through.
So someone has to almost write it down for them to remember.
It's often recorded, yeah, or someone else writes it. Yeah, they don't remember at all. The person comes out of the trance and doesn't remember anything.
But do you remember everything pretty clearly? When you access the Akashic Records, you remember everything pretty clearly?
Yeah, and I'm very conscious of the conversation that's going on. During a trance channeling, my understanding of what I've read about people is they kind of step aside and they're aware that someone else is speaking through them. But when it comes through me, I know that it's me. And so that's why Edgar Casey stuff, but he did all kinds of medical, people would ask about medical conditions, and he was accessing doctors through the records.
Through the records. See, that is really exciting, and I suppose since you've been doing this and it's easier and easier for you all the time, you're getting more and more information that probably ties together and makes it even more exciting for you about what's going on.
Yeah, it's just the information that comes through in the most seemingly personal readings. There's always a lot of universal and global information that comes through, and I do get things just make so much more sense to me all around everything.
Do you feel like everybody's intuition and psychic abilities are starting to get heightened a little bit?
And part of that reason for that, and part of the reason why I can do conscious channeling for the Akashic Records and Edgar Casey did it trance channeling, is the veil. It's easier to access other dimensions for everyone at this point. That's changing. And that's why the information is so direct now. It's not in, symbolism like through the tarot and through the runes or stuff. You ask a question and you get an answer. And that's what else I'm so excited about the records for, is I'm tired of all this. You ask a question and you get the answer, you get symbolism, you get something in your life that's supposed to demonstrate something. I just want to know the answer. I want somebody to say, here you go. And that's what the records do.
You're one of those left brain people.
Very much so. I have no patience. I want it now. Immediate gratification, and I want to know step 1, 2, and 3 to get there. And that's what they do. They will stop until someone takes a piece of paper and say, okay, you need to write this down. These are the steps.
It seems like a lot of Montanans are, that way. And in fact, when I went to the American Feng Shui Institute, I promised myself that I would bring back all the logical, practical things that I would learn, about Feng Shui. But as it ended up, it's all tied in together, the spiritual and the practical, more tangible aspects to it. And so, but that's what's really neat, is because it actually opened up all those doors for me. And I think everybody, I get people walking into the Feng Shui Center almost like they're looking. They're ready to
they're not even sure why they're there.
They're not even sure what they're looking for. They're just ready to find something. And this excites me when you talk about the records being much easier to access than they used to be, because it seems like everything is that way.
Yeah,
well, it's
things
all
are
part
just
of the
getting
same.
easier and easier. Because we're moving
That
more
collective
towards,
consciousness.
it's time for us to remember and to move into the 5th dimension. And so we're just, all the blocks that we set up for us to allow us to experience 3rd dimension, those are being removed by us. It was set up this way.
Can we talk a little bit more about what might have come out about the year 2012 and my intuition tells me that might be a period where we do go into the 5th dimension. Is that what that's
Ascension is moving out of the 3rd dimension into the 5th dimension. And let's see if I can remember. There was really good information in a recent reading about ascension. See, this is one of, I just remember it was really great, and now I can't remember the details of it.
You mean this was one time you accessed it?
Someone was asking about ascension.
Okay.
They were talking, in someone's reading, they were talking about ascension. And what they were saying was that we envision ascension as moving out of 3rd dimension into 5th dimension. But what it actually is mastering the skills to move in and out of all dimensions, including 3rd dimension and 5th dimension. And what's involved in that is mastering the skills that are in 3rd dimension, know when that's appropriate to use, and mastering the skills to use in 5th dimension and be able at will to move in and out of them. So ascension is not a one-way ticket. It can be.
Right.
But once you figure out how to do it, you can come in and out of 3rd dimension, so it's like you can have the best of all dimensions.
What I'm thinking, though, is once everybody's reached that 5th dimension, are they going to want to come back?
Yeah, absolutely, because there's things in each dimension. The confusing thing about dimensions, too, is people think about it hierarchically, as if, okay, 4th dimension's better, 5th dimension's better, 10th dimension is just really good, the 200th dimension is really excellent, but that's not how it is. Each dimension, there are certain things you can experience. You can only experience time, space, and 3rd dimension. And so when you're in 7th dimension and thinking, you can't even conceive of what time space would be like.
You miss that time.
Yeah, so it's like you want to go to Disneyland and try the time space ride, which is 3rd dimension. And so there's all kinds of beings that aren't able to come in a third dimension because of the time-space limitation. So this is a pretty exciting thing for us to be here.
It is. I don't have any complaints about it. There was a real sadness about the events that happened this week. But now as I sit here and talking with you about it, I think that's one of the things we all need to do now is start talking about it and start understanding what it means inside of our hearts, our own hearts.
And understanding what it means for the United States as a country, because the United States is an entity, just as Missoula is, just as Montana is, just as each of us are, just as Gaia is, the Earth is. So think of the United States as an entity, and we need to pay more attention to what the United States wants to express through us by our creation of a country. There's kind of this give and take.
And our country is made up of so many different, people, but when you get right down to it, people are all the same. To me, that's been in my heart for a long time. And hopefully, it will be in other people's hearts. But I wanted to ask you, have you ever accessed the Akashic Records to ask questions about the area that you live in now?
Little bits and pieces people have come,
Really?
have asked about that.
About
the Bitterroot Valley and Missoula itself.
Because they talk about the valley, Bitterroot Valley, Missoula, all the way up to Kalispell as being one of the apexes. Is that what they talk about it in the earth changes, when people are talking about how the actual physical earth changes, some are going to come about, that we're one of the strong apexes where people are going to come together? And
because it's not like the only little bit that I've had on that. We haven't really asked about earth changes because it is a stable place. It's not going to be a shifting place as other things shift.
Okay.
And
that's
have
probably
shifted.
why a lot of people are drawn here, because they're naturally told this is a place that's pretty steady.
And there's just a particular energy that emanates from the earth herself, and that's just a clear energy here. And so it supports what people are wanting to create.
People talk about the actual vibration of the earth rising. Is that something that comes out in the records, or have you?
The earth herself is ascending,
Mm-hmm.
which is moving into a higher dimension.
When that happens, okay, that, I know how you said we can come and go out of the different dimensions. How's the earth going to come and go out of different dimensions?
I don't know. I haven't. That would be fun to open her records and ask.
That would be a fun question to
I
ask.
don't know.
Maybe that would be the one we could do when we take our break and you go out and get the prayer. We could maybe ask that one. So don't forget, audience. And I bet our audience is going to have some questions tonight. You're ready. I can tell you're ready. So in fact, this might be a good place to ask our audience some of the questions that they might have. Can we do that? I hope you've got many questions planned, because she is, she's brilliant. She's exciting to, for us to ask questions.
I love my job.
Yeah.
Now, when you do open the Akashic Records on, say, the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Open the Akashic Records of the Great Pyramid?
Yeah. Does someone have to ask you that question, or can you go in on your own and...
I could go in on my own.
Okay.
I usually, when I read my own records, open my own records, I write things down. So I like, if I open the records of a place like that, I like someone else to come along and they can ask the questions and we can record it.
Okay. Okay.
Because I think then that's the kind of thing that I really hate transcribing stuff. But if I could get somebody to transcribe it, I have, people who would like to ask those questions and just put it all out there and, for people to know.
Right.
So if you have someone to come along and write the
So we can,
for you.
well, we can tape it and then somebody can transcribe it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
transcription's just really slow and I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah. Me neither.
But I'd be willing to do the channeling if somebody would do the transcription.
Well, and also about the Hall of Records there. I've gotten several emails that have said that Monday, this September 17th, will be the beginning of the opening of the Hall of Records. And not a complete opening, but those who have the ability to go in there and get the information will start to be able to get in. They'll be completely opened in 2012. But
Before that.
it'll be bits and pieces in the meantime, and especially to those who have the ability to go in and access that. And I don't know what is in there, or if that would be considered an Akashic record for
You could
something.
open the records of
For the
you could
pyramid.
open the records of the Hall of Records and ask about
Okay.
it. So you can open the records of anything. So that you could open the records of the pyramid, but keep in mind how much stuff is in the pyramid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we don't even know how to ask. All that would be opened if we accessed it. But that's part of where the asking of the questions comes in.
Okay.
If we weren't even sure you can't just kind of go in and hope information
Look
kind of
around,
falls
yeah.
out. You kind of have to know what you're looking for.
So your best way to get that type of information is to actually have someone come in with those specific questions and ask, and then.
And what could happen is, and if you only have, you know, like those general questions, you could still open it, and then as information comes, you would know the questions to ask, and so information would be, and if the thing about the records is, if something is interesting to you, and you have access to the records through me or through someone, that means it's time. You want to know it's time. That's how the asking of the question works. Is you are interested in it, and so that means it's yours to find out.
And one more question before I pass the mic to my friend.
You can ask many questions.
Okay. When I do healing work on clients, quite often I get into their past lives. In fact, this last week I relived a past life from a client. Was I in their Akashic records?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And that's what there's all kinds of ways to get in. And many people who do energy work just move in and out of the records without even realizing that that's where they're at. The records are not anything profoundly special in and of themselves. It's just a place where information is recorded. And so anyone can access that information
So
when it's useful to something.
It's all of the information
Yeah.
that's out there. It's
All of the information. Yep. And the only thing that's required is that you go in for a reason. Like I said, you can't go wander around the Akashic records. You won't get any information. But if you're doing healing work and there's some relevant information, of course, immediate access. You're right there.
First of all, I'm intrigued by the name Akashic Records. Where does that
Isn't it
come
a
from?
wonderful word? The Akasha is just an energy. Let's see if I can remember. It's an energy that it's talked about, I think, in Hinduism. It's just a particular kind of energy. I love that word. Just something about it just tickles me. Akasha. I say it a lot.
So it's not a Mayan word.
I don't think so. I think it's more
Okay.
more ancient than that.
Okay. I'm trying to understand, as you're channeling and you're accessing this information, does this come to you visually or telepathically, or how are you receiving this as a channel?
That's a great question. I can tell you exactly what it looks like, but I don't see it. It's just all the information. I can tell you what it looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like, but I don't see it through those senses. How's that for an answer? Because, and I used to get, when I first started trying to sort out my channeling, I would get so frustrated because they would say, you know, what do you see? And I would see nothing. I would just see blackness. But then somebody would ask a question of whatever I was trying to do, and I could answer it. I'm not in the records, but this was just when I was playing around with my own channeling before. So that's, a lot of people trip themselves up thinking there's no information there, and that's what I was kind of talking about earlier, that people ask a question and then they wait for an answer, you know, in words, and it's there. They just don't recognize the form it's in. And so
What is the role of intent as you're asking the question?
that's the really important part is intent, in the sense of something has occurred to you and you're following up on it. That's how the intent is. So it's kind of an opportunity for you to practice following your own instinct and intuition in kind of a conscious sort of way.
The person who comes to you for a reading, do you have to prepare them to relax, or is there any kind of preparation mentally or emotionally that the person has to undergo before the session starts?
You have great questions. When somebody phones for a session, that's when the process sets in motion. Like I said earlier, I tell them to keep a notebook and pen nearby because it sets in motion there. There's nothing they have to do because it's something that they're just ready to go into the records. There are some restrictions. You can't drink alcohol or have any drugs other than prescription drugs within 24 hours of the reading.
Okay.
Avoid caffeine 2 hours before the reading because it changes. There's reasons for both of those. And I have a list of just kind of the things to do. People, before the reading isn't so important. After the reading, when people come out of the records after half hour, an hour, they often get really tired and then they process stuff for the next days or weeks. So it's more of a being prepared for the changes afterwards. I did have one woman who was real concerned. She said that she tried to be hypnotized or tried to do other channeling and had never gotten anywhere. And she was really concerned about it, and we just sat down and we were right into it.
And that brings me to another question. The processes of hypnotherapy or past life regression, Is that any way of accessing the Akashic records?
Those are other ways of accessing it. It's just information. If you think, the most straightforward way is to think about it like a library. It's not as physical as a library, but it's just, or the internet, where information is stored. And you want information, you just go get it. And so you can get in just, all kinds of ways. And so anytime it's useful, you're allowed in the records. And that ties in with the asking of questions. You have an intent, you want some information, all you have to do is ask.
And you do it with integrity. Do you think you could ask questions
And you have to do it with integrity.
You do it with integrity, in purity of heart probably, or whatever. Because I was going to say, if people were trying to access the records, like, could I find out about, let's say, an ex-husband? I could ask you questions, and we could access.
The information you would get is information about yourself in relation to him. We wouldn't have his records open, so it would. Right. And then they say we can't give that information about his records. But you ask, but a lot of people would be, like, for example, if you were asking about your ex-husband and you wanted to know why he did something at a particular time, and you can't ask that question because we don't have his records open. I encourage people to go ahead and ask it anyway, and the records have a response to it, more of taking ownership and how you interpret it, how you misinterpreted it. And so you can still get answers and closures to it without having someone else's records open and without going into someone else's records, which you couldn't do. I couldn't do. No one can do.
So, see, I guess I was thinking my ex-husband, he was adopted, and he doesn't know a lot about his medical history. So I was thinking, could you go in there and find out information about medical history, which would be beneficial to him?
Yep.
And at that point, they might let you ask those questions if it was beneficial for a good intent.
It still has to be, it's very clear, it has to be his records open, and like if you wanted to go in and ask about his medical records because it's for his best interest, it's still, no, that wouldn't work.
No, he still has to.
It has to be, yeah. It's that's not negotiable at all. The other thing you can do, this is kind of off the subject a little bit, but I can open up multiple people's records. For example, I did a session a couple weeks ago, a group of people, there was 6 of them, I believe.
All at one city,
And they were wanting to do a center. And so they were all asking about that. So I opened all their records and the records of the center because the center has its own records. Or I've done reading with 2 people and a corporation that they had. So I'd open the 2 people's records and the corporation, and everyone can ask. So then in that instance, so I could open your records and your ex-husband's, and you could go back and forth there.
Well, that's interesting. And I didn't mean to steal the questions away from our audience. So let's get back to our audience.
I have one last question. This is for people who are concerned about their health, or if they're suspicious about a health problem. Is that something that you could access and get some clarity on?
People ask questions about health all the time.
That would be interesting.
And the thing to keep in mind is when they ask about health, you get right to the core of it. It's not, if you, for a while I had some health things that I hemmed and hawed about, and I didn't go into the records and ask about for a while because I knew that things were going to change, and I had a little bit of attachment to my health stuff. Worked through that, but it took me a while.
So when you're working with, say, a married couple, each one has their own, and then the marriage has their records.
Yes.
Could someone come and have you open up, if the other part of the couple is not there, have you still open up their records and the marriage records?
Of the marriage, no. And that would be like in a business. You couldn't open the records of a business without like the CEO or a primary person in the business. So you have to be, yeah. And the other thing too is I'm not real big on keeping track of rules and laws and stuff like that, so I don't have to. If I try to do something that is not allowed, they'll just say no. So it's great. It just couldn't be easier.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jack, do you have any questions?
No. You can ask questions. I could ask questions about myself in this present lifetime. Do these records start with say you've had past lives? Would you have all your records be in the same line or same air? In a continuation.
When they're in the records, it's not linear because it's out of time-space. It's out of third dimension. So are you saying could you ask about the present life and your past lives and your future lives?
Or is it just about your soul at this particular time?
You can ask about all of it.
Oh, okay.
You can ask about the future as well.
Oh, okay.
It's all because it's just the record of everything since everything from the time of separation from source. And so there's a whole range of experience there.
Okay. I think I got it. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Good.
Yeah.
I guess that made me think of another question too. Can you access the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can.
And usually the way, sometimes the future hasn't been determined yet, or there's different possibilities.
Mhm.
And the most successful way to ask questions about the future is, if I want to have $1 million in 5 years, what can I do today to make that happen?
Okay.
And they'll tell you
Mhm.
if that's what you want. If you really believe you can have that and that's what you want.
Uh-huh.
Then
I think, did Carla have another question? You sure? You didn't? Okay. Yeah, it seems like a lot of energy workers then have been accessing the Akasha records in their field, you know, a lot without even realizing that was what they were doing.
And even times, I know the question was, you got information. Also, just accessing the Akashic records when you're bringing someone else back into alignment, because you're just bringing them into their divine blueprint. So you have to access the records to do that. And people don't even realize they're doing it. But they have to have some sort of template in order to bring the body to where it's supposed to be, and that's where they go.
Mm-hmm.
So people do it all the time. Everyone does it. And children do it all the time. It's not even...
Children
yeah, they
are
just
such an
yeah.
open channel. You know,
Mhm,
it seems
mhm.
like they're so honest and true. Hilke has one more question. Let's
Yes, just popped into my mind.
go to Hilke.
I'm just wondering, can you, is there some way of asking a question of how you can align your will to the divine will
Mhm.
to, you know, really maximize your potential in life?
Mhm.
Would that be a valid question?
That would be a great question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they would talk about, because basically when you get into the records, if you think about this in a bigger perspective, you're just having a conversation with another aspect of yourself. And so just by entering the records and having this conversation, you're beginning to do that, what you just asked already. And so that's exactly, and that's a general question, so they'd answer that generally, and then they'd point you in the direction of how,
Right,
what
I
you
just
could do
wondered
to
if
go
that was-
home and how you could start doing that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, would that be a question that's too nebulous or too general?
No, that's a great question. And those are the kind of questions people ask often. They kind of start out their session that way, and then it gets more specific. Yeah, yeah, that's the kind of thing that you know that's possible, and you know that's yours to do, and you just don't quite know how to get there, and that's where the records come in. They'll tell you how to
Another
get
question, let's say, you know, I personally met at sort of a crossroads here,
Mhm.
you know, as far as my life is concerned right now, and, you know, I have really two options. And with that, would it be great to see you to find out which is the better option?
That is also a really common situation that people are finding themselves in now. It's a time of choice.
Right.
And the thing is, both options are equally viable more often than not.
That's the real problem.
Right. And that would be a really great future kind of question. If I go this way, what's going to happen? And then you'll kind of follow up on that, and then you go back to your juncture and follow that out. And it just gives you some more information. Yeah, that's the perfect kind of thing. And you come out feeling like you actually have something to work with. Because this is the kind of thing that you just loop in your head around and around. Think, I could do this, I could do that, which is better. The other thing is that people, this is what's coming up in a lot of sessions, the question you're asking, and it's not time to make a choice, which is why people are having such a hard time deciding. It's as if, as we're raising in vibration, we're becoming aware of, for example, when you ask that question of yourself, you get all the information of the past and the future, of the possibilities of that, and it's a little overwhelming. And so that's why it's so hard to make a decision. So you ask the question, you get all the information you would get in the records, but you don't know what to do with it or how to compute it.
Right.
And so the records help you sort that out. They also do things when people are in the records of clearing things, or like there was a great example the other day. They told someone how to put up some new antennas to start receiving other information differently. And they just told her step by step how to do a meditation. It was really great.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've asked a question like what Hilke was talking about, with the Akashic records, would something maybe come through you saying that neither of these options are the way you should go?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
should go to this way. You know,
Yep.
like you
Yep.
open a third option maybe or something.
Yeah. And the way you'd ask the question is, this is, I want to have more time for my family, or I want to work less, or I want to feel more satisfied, or something like that.
Mhm.
Which of these paths would get me to that end more readily or more easily? And then they might say, neither of those. This path would be better. That's how that would fit.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
what I was thinking, that something will come through just totally what you're not expecting
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
I had are you finished with your question?
No, once that information comes
Mhm.
through, but I mean, it's your ultimate choice though, as to
It
what
is-
option you're going to choose.
It is, but you have information to make the choice.
Right.
It doesn't, you're not going to feel the same way about it before you ask the question. I know I'm being kind of vague here. It's hard to do it without being in the records, but when you ask that information, you're done, you're ready to make a decision. Or you're not, but they'll tell you what to do to get to the point to make a decision. So that you're not just going to keep looping it with more information. It's not as if you're just going to have a bigger loop. It's just going to you're going to have an exit off your loop.
So it will change your life, like
and
you
they'll
said.
give you a specific way to do that.
So having a session with you and opening the Akashic Records really will change your life. It sounds
Yeah,
like. It sounds
and
like.
and I get feedback. I have, I don't know, maybe 25-30% people come back and do second or third readings, but most people I just see once, and I'll hear from them, later, and everything changed immediately every time. And that's kind of ideally how I see the records. Is I don't think of it as people coming back and needing a tune-up. They come in and everything changes, and then they get this shift that works for them. One person did ask, she said, how will I know when it's time to come back in the records? And the records said, well, tomorrow you're going to think that you're ready to go back in the records because you have some more questions. But they said the time to come back in is when you're asking questions about an entirely different topic.
And it probably takes time to process what they
Mhm.
learn from the Akashic
Yeah.
Records.
And
so-
sometimes by the time they get there, they don't need the Akashic Records because they're directly accessing it themselves.
I want us to take a little break here pretty soon, so we can maybe do that. And
Yeah,
you
I can go out and get my prayer.
And you can run out and get your prayer, if you wouldn't mind, because I was thinking what's going to happen though is we're all going to want to ask questions. You'll be here till midnight though. No, but the other night I was watching that John Edwards. Are you familiar
Mhm,
with
mhm.
him? And
Yeah.
he crosses over almost instantly and
Yep.
connects with people's that are dead, deceased,
Mhm.
but that are connected with you. Is that a part of the Akashic Records?
Mhm.
It is.
He's-
so,
yeah, he's-
so everyone on the other side, can you ask questions
You
to a
can-
loved one?
Yes,
over there?
yes, and they can come. Then they feel different than the record keepers do.
Uh-huh.
I can tell when a loved one comes, it feels different. And you can ask, are they here? Sometimes they're there, sometimes they'll come when you ask.
So the process
Mhm.
he's doing is actually part of accessing the
Yep.
Akashic Records.
It's
too.
just information, yep.
Mhm.
Anytime anyone's getting any information that's not just readily available third dimension, it's the records.
Yeah,
It's
I was
just-
I
it's
was
just
so
an
surprised how fast he was.
Off-planet library.
And you seem like that. It seems
Mhm.
like he's real fast like that, and I was
Yeah.
thinking you seem like that.
Well, think about
Carla's
a hunch
fast
of
like that, too.
intuition. You're going to cross the street and you suddenly think to step back.
Uh-huh.
That's how quick you're into the records.
Yeah.
So
It comes to us quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We just really have to trust. That's the part where
Okay.
most people haven't quite gotten to the point where they're even aware, that they want to trust or listen.
Are some people apprehensive about this? I mean, what happens if there's something scary or frightening that you might encounter? Feedback that you get?
I've actually not had anyone ask that question, and it never even occurred to me. I suppose people might be, but then if they're scared, they might not come in. They must not come.
Because I know a friend who's a reader, and she says when she does the past life regressions, she says some of the patients say, I'll never do that again.
I would question about that, how that's presented, because nothing, everything is perfect and everything is for a reason. So I can't imagine accessing a past life, even horrendous past lives where you do things like blow up planets. I have people in past lives.
Well, she said it's more encountering certain frequencies of fear.
They don't exist in the records. There's
Oh,
no
really?
fear in the records whatsoever.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And see, that's another difference with the records and the channeling that I really appreciate, is it's completely, I think of it, I know I keep making these bank analogies, but like Fort Knox, there are so much protections, nothing of any fear or lower vibrations or anything other than love could even come near an Akashic record reading.
Oh, I see.
It's not even.
Okay, so in that way, it may differ from the past life regressions.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's quite different than any sort of channeling because it's so, it's just clear and it's completely its own thing. Nothing else is allowed in, no other kind of energies.
Okay.
It sounds direct. It
Yeah.
sounds real honest,
Mhm.
pure channel.
Yep.
Well, is it a good time for us to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay, and then she'll go out and get her prayer, and this really is exciting. Thank you.
I love
Hey,
talking about it.
Well, I was going to say, while you're going to get your prayer, I'm going to take this time, if Frank will keep me connected, to thank everybody that helps us make this possible.
Oh, okay. I
Okay.
will take my water and I'll be right back.
Okay, because we always try to do this during the show. We have so many people that help out here at MCAT. And first I'd like to start with MCAT, because they're the ones who have all the equipment and make it possible for us to have the weekly show that we do, Voices on the Wind. I'd like to thank Frank, our producer.
John,
Uh-huh.
because he's still got not enough shot. Why don't you wait till after she gets up and goes?
I'm having a heck of a time
Okay.
trying to get
How's
myself
that
off.
Yeah, I think we can move that. Can you move
She's
that,
going to
please?
start over when Shaun leaves, Frank, so. Yeah, otherwise.
We have our
So
director.
much going on the side there.
Not right here.
Okay, there he goes.
It's like, he always pulls something like that.
All right. Okay, now you can start, John.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd like to thank everybody that makes this show possible, Voices on the Wind. I'd like to thank Frank, our producer, and he puts in a lot of hours. He's here tonight running the board, and then he comes back behind the scenes and spends many hours editing and to help us look good and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to thank MCAT for making this possible with the equipment that we get to use, and having the studio here where we can come and we can have our audience. Now we have an audience. I'd like to really thank the audience for being here, because it always makes it, more of a, I mean, it just makes you feel, it feels more real. I think it makes us more on top of it when we have an audience, so I really appreciate the audience. Jack, I'd like to thank you. He's the cameraman here, and he does a great job with the cameras. He helps
You're welcome.
things stay in order, We have wonderful people here on the set. I'd like to thank Rainbow's End. They lend us these backdrops, and those of you that have watched the show from time to time, I think you'll always notice or realize there is a different backdrop we try to get every time. So the Rainbow's End really has a nice selection, and we take advantage of that, and we appreciate that. Who else? I'd like to thank all the people at the Feng Shui Center that helped me out there. I started the business there at 115 West Main about 3 years ago. It was just me and a couple girls that had their own business in there. We had 3 separate little businesses in there. Well, since they've moved on doing other things. But now I've brought in energy workers that work out of our back healing room, and every day we have a different energy worker. I'd like to introduce some of those to you. On Mondays, we have Jerry Robinson, and he's new, and I want everybody to come down and meet Jerry. He does yin-yang balancing. He works with the meridians to get the total body back in alignment and working more smoothly. He uses a mixture of acupressure and Reiki, and it's a very unique system. You need to try it to see what it's like. On Tuesdays, we have Carla Fox, and everybody that's met Carla just loves Carla. She has gone to school to become an Inca shaman, so she does her Inca shamanic work there at the Feng Shui Center on Tuesdays, and she has many different types of healings. Illumination is one of them, and she can explain all that to you, and she has brochures that are available anytime you want to come and pick one of those up. Wednesdays, we have Julie Chase, and she's our massage therapist, and she does deep tissue massage and Swedish massage with Reiki, craniosacral. She's very talented, and she's also a new member that's been a great asset. Thursdays, we've had for a while now Rosie Harper, and everyone should come in and meet Rosie. She's a unique individual. She always, I think anybody who just meets Rosie, she uplifts you. You can't help but hear her laugh and just be lifted by her laugh alone. And she does flower essences, and they also are almost like an electrical charge, a way that you can balance the system very quickly by using the flower essences. Friday, we leave that open for special events. One of the special events coming up next spring that I've just got to start telling everybody about, and we have a sign-up sheet there. If you're interested at all in seeing Max, it's a crystal skull. when Earth Spirit Books was in business here in Missoula, she had Max the Crystal Skull about 6 years ago, and it was a very wonderful event, and we're going to have him back. He's the only, there's 5 different crystal skulls that have been found on the Earth. Max is the only one that is available to see. The others are kept pretty much in secret hiding in private collections. Max is a phenomenal thing. It looks like a skull, but it's total crystal. They don't know how it was created. They don't have, today they don't have the equipment that could recreate Max. They figure he's somewhere in the age of 10,000 years old at least. And when this lady was given Max by a Tibetan monk, I believe, that had acquired Max, and she brings him, and she brings him so that you can view him in a room on your own, which is a little bit more expensive, but then they also have group seatings where you can sit, and she lights Max up and you can ask questions and be by him, and you can bring your crystals in and have your crystals, I would say, ignited almost by Max. I guess when he's in the area, he reaches 21 block area, you can feel the vibration from Max in the 21 block area. So it's very, very exciting that he's going to be coming in the spring. So come in and sign up for that so that we can make sure that happens. And there's always wonderful events happening, and that's, I guess, why I'm bringing it up, is the metaphysical community and the healers, the alternative medicine healers in Missoula are a wonderful group of people, and we try to, that's what the show here is about. Voices on the Wind is introducing you to all the different people that are available in the community and outside the community, the Bitterroot, and we've had people come as far down as Kalispell. We've interviewed people from Kalispell. So just letting you know that's some of the things that we try to have happen. And I want to thank everybody again for making that possible. Okay, and shortly we're going to be back with our wonderful guest tonight. With our wonderful guest. Just let's cut it for a minute. Take 5.
Palmistry.
Oh yes, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Oh, geez. Thank you very much. I forgot saying. I'm so glad Frank brought to my attention that not only do we have the energy healers in the back room, but we have a smaller room where we bring in readers, tarot readers, palm readers, crystal ball readers, numerology, many different things, astrology readers. So you can come in and get your charts read and have your tarot cards read. That's also a wonderful tool for learning things about what's going on in your life and dealing with them. It just opens up ideas. Many people are afraid. If they've never done something like that before, they're afraid. But there's nothing to be afraid of. Just like we heard Shaun say tonight, everything is in divine order. Everything's going to happen. It is as it is. But what happens is in a reading, you can often understand more what your choices are and how to go about making your choices with more discernment. Can you think of anything else, audience, that I'm forgetting to mention? Oh, every Thursday at noon we have the free lectures. In fact, today we had Mooncat, and she gave a free lecture on astrology, and there was quite a connection that came out between the events of this last week and the astrological configurations. So that was interesting. So be sure and come in, and we have a calendar that we put out, so you can pick up a calendar and find out about all those things. Frank, our producer, he's the one that does the palm readings at the Feng Shui Center. So you can come in and meet Frank in person. We don't get to see him here behind the... We don't get to see him behind the board here at MCAT, but he actually is visible at the Feng Shui Center on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Hey, when this gal comes back in, I'll tell her, talk her into a reading if you can.
That's what we're going to do, Frank. That's
Oh,
what
how
she's
did you
going
do
to
it?
do. That's why
Oh.
she went out to the car to get her prayer.
Oh, I know that. Oh,
She's
great.
gonna open it up
Okay,
for us.
We're rolling. She wouldn't admit, she was saying she wasn't going to do it at first, so she, great. Okay.
Yeah, just so I think we're going to...
Who's going to do it on?
Well, we're all going to... I guess we should draw straws.
5th.
Or we'll see how, we'll see what she says.
Well, let's
No,
go
they
with
usually
you
say
if
the
you
fourth.
want,
The
that's fine.
fourth.
And you just ask a
There's
few
still clarity
questions.
there.
How do you
We
feel?
thought of a question already, Shaun. Can you remember what question we thought of that was
Makes them go to
more of like an
the-
overall question, I think that had to do with the United States?
Well, she did a pretty good job on that, but you want to do it personally?
Well, and actually, I was just, I
Well,
checked
there's
in with the
many,
records,
many
and I don't think
dimensions,
that we
so
should
even the
open
fifth
them on,
dimension is
I don't think
still
that we
On
should
TV
open
Live?
bottom of the
I was
barrel.
gonna say,
Yeah.
it
Want to do
was,
it
Something like the
individually,
200.
Oh, yeah,
Shaun?
there's many.
I don't think so, because I mean, I'm always gung ho, I think it's a great thing, and they were saying that it just, they tell the truth.
Mhm.
And you may not, without preparation, because no one here has really set this in motion.
Right.
And to do it this quickly, it's not
I'm
honoring the
willing to go
integrity
for
of
it
the
if you
records.
want.
Yeah, but
Okay, I'm
they're
a
not
tough guy.
willing to go for
Well,
it, yeah.
okay.
yeah, she asked,
So-
and we might be able to do that another time, and not only that, but it'll bring
You want to
more
bring
interest for
something
the
on a
people
world
that.
basis or something like that, or-
Well, that's what I was thinking, but I just asked them, and they said, them being the records.
Well, and I
Just
think
things-
for you to explain that is good.
Okay,
I mean,
you
Let me
explain that.
catch you up.
because that makes sense to me, you know.
I love to go there, because I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, and we're both that way, you know,
Yeah.
we're both that kind of personality, but I think.
Would you ask a political question?
I'm not willing to tell the truth at this point on TV about the politics.
Politics is the hardest.
The information that I've been getting, I opened the records, like I said, on Tuesday, and the information that I've got is very different than what the mass conscious is, and I'm not willing to put myself.
She was saying
Yeah,
that
not-
people aren't quite ready to hear.
When the
what
camera's
it's
off,
about.
would you tell us?
What they said? Yeah. Well, yeah, what I can remember. Oops. And I'm not trying to be all
Oh,
this
no, I
big
understand.
secret
No,
heavy
no,
stuff.
I
It's
realize
just,
that.
and I don't think that I would be in any danger. I just think, yeah, like you were saying, that people are,
They're not quite
they're still
ready.
processing what happened. And I, as I mentioned before, I get really impatient quickly, and I'm, okay, this happened, this means stuff's gonna happen, let's do it. And I was ready for it to happen yesterday, and people were still grieving, and I just jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah.
It might take, even till,
So
next
this is going
year.
to evolve into something that's positive, like a
Oh,
step?
absolutely. This is a completely positive thing.
It's going to
Absolutely.
be a catalyst
Yeah.
for a
And
positive?
there are many people that aren't ready to even hear that yet,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So I see what she's saying, and
How do you know when to put
we're
the
back
camera on?
right now. Frank, are we ready to go? We'll say
Probably still
we're back right
running,
now
so
with Shaun
Runs all the time.
Martins, right?
Mhm.
And we were going to try to access the Akasha records live here on TV, but she has kind of connected, and they're saying that's not really what's going to happen tonight, because they're not really.
There's a
right.
preparation
Yeah.
and a consciousness,
Changes.
the intention in the asking of questions,
Mhm.
and the going to the records. There's excitement, enthusiasm about it, but it's kind of a, it just,
Premature.
yeah, they're just saying that it's not right.
Yeah.
And because they tell the truth, and they're saying that opening someone's records right now it sounds so cryptic. It just wouldn't be appropriate to do this on television.
Well, and it makes sense to me, because like you said, if I was going to ask some questions, we haven't even had the opportunity to prepare me
Right, yeah.
right in the way that you usually do and everything.
Right. And not for me, for you, the preparation of what your psyche and what your
Right, and
what
what
you
might
want to
come
do.
out over the air is
Right.
something you never know
And-
what to expect.
And even though we could edit it, it just might be something that it might not be time.
Right, yeah. And I think that that's in divine order, and that we just won't, we won't go there tonight. But
As
what
fun
I-
as it is to go there.
Yes, and what we do want to do, and we might be able to have you on a show later on where we do have more preparation, and we can do that.
Mhm.
So we're
Can
not
think
saying
about
this
that.
won't happen on Voices on the Wind, maybe in the future, but in the meantime, I'd like to be able to tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
Okay.
And I noticed you've got, do you let people call, like, do you have a phone number?
I do.
Can you give us your phone number?
It's 777-0377.
Okay, that's 777
0377.
0377. That's a phone number you can reach Shaun at to make an appointment. And then also, she has a website, and the website is http:// to the right, and it's pages, PAGES, just like it sounds, .prodigy, PRODIGY.net/Shaun Martins, which is just one word in small letters, SHAUNMARTINS. TINZ. And if you need to, you can call her to find that out if you didn't quite get the website.
And on the website, there's an article that I wrote that I channeled through the records that was published in New Earth in the spring, I guess it was. But it's a really good article kind of giving you an overview of what the records are, and it's from the records.
All right, and when she says New Earth, she means New Earth magazine that Mel and Stephanie put out, and they were also responsible for Oasis Productions, the Wednesday night lectures, which I don't think they're doing that anymore. They might start that up again, but right now, so that you know, they're not doing the Wednesday night series. But that's why, again, we need everybody to come down on Thursdays at noon and get the lectures, because there's a lot of wonderful people in the community that are willing to come out and give these free lectures. We need to support them and get everybody out there so that you can take advantage of that wonderful information. This has been so much fun tonight.
It has been.
To visit with you, and I'm sure your phone's going to be ringing off the wall, I hope, for you, because
It's just a wonderful process.
I can see that you're excited about it and that you enjoy doing it, and that's what, if you can help people find their life's purpose, that was one of the big things that came out tonight, that a lot of people are searching for their life's purpose. This would be in itself a wonderful tool that you could help people with. So on that note, I'd like to say good night, unless our audience has anything else that they want to add or anything. Thank you, good night.
Thank you.
Shaun, thank you so much for being with us.
This has been fun. Thank you.
Okay, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good night, Frank.
Good night, Frank.
I get so excited to talk about it, and I really did. I'm sorry to show everybody up in
Well, that was apparent. It was just totally apparent. It didn't surprise me at all that it came out that way, because